Morning, everybody. My name is Amina Khan, and I'm the director of the Center for Middle East and Africa at the Institute of Strategic Studies. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar, which is on a subject that is of immense importance to Pakistan and, for that matter, our center, that is Africa Day. Today, we celebrate not only a special day for Africa, but today also marks the first event being held by our newly established center. This alone indicates the great importance Pakistan, and for that matter, the Institute, places on its relationship with Africa. Today, we have gathered to celebrate a people of unparalleled resolve and perseverance. Africa Day is a commemoration of celebration and of unwavering determination of the people of the African continent who have fought courageously for their freedom. Never once looking back, our African brothers and sisters have turned adversity into opportunity and are embracing the future with arms wide open. Steadfastness in the face of hardship is what Pakistan shares with Africa, and this is precisely what makes up the foundation of our future ties with Africa. Pakistan's relations with Africa are steeped in a history of common challenges. It is due to these deep-rooted ties that we have decided to observe this day, that is Africa Day, to remember our mutual ties, to celebrate our history, and to also pay homage to the sacrifices of both our forefathers, and not to mention to look towards a prosperous future partnership. Historically, links between Africa and the people of the subcontinent were first established when the people of both regions were in the shackles of colonialism. After gaining independence in 1947, Pakistan lent support to the struggles of the African countries who were still under the garb of colonial rule. From being a member of the UN Commission supporting Eritrea's independence from Italian rule to backing movements against racial discrimination in South Africa, as well as extending moral support to liberation struggles in Morocco, Zimbabwe, and Namibia, Pakistan has remained a steadfast friend to Africa. Pakistan is also a regular contributor to the UN peacekeeping missions to Ghana, Somalia, Eritrea, Congo, as well as other countries. African soldiers and officers of defense forces are frequently trained in Pakistan. Celebrated African leaders have visited Pakistan. Visionaries like the late Nelson Mandela visited Pakistan twice and was awarded the highest honors of our country, that is the Nishan-e-Pakistan. And I'm proud to say that our institute, that is the Institute of Strategic Studies, had the distinct honor of hosting Mr. Mandela during his visit to Pakistan in 1992, which remains an emotional experience for the Pakistani people who will always remember, excuse me, his official pronouncements, be that on Kashmir or Afghanistan. However, despite this engagement, unfortunately, the volume of interaction between Pakistan and the African continent has not been as great as it should be, and there remain immense untapped opportunities, particularly on the economic front. In short, there are gaps in cooperation. However, regional geopolitical realities unfortunately have kept Pakistan's attention diverted from the African continent's ample economic potential. However, this is changing under the vision of Prime Minister Imran Khan's new Engage Africa policy, where the government is focusing on economic diplomacy as well as adopting tangible measures to establish robust bilateral economic partnership with the African countries. This policy aims to enhance opportunities for concrete economic engagement, mutual trade, investments, and joint ventures between Pakistan and Africa. Under this policy, Pakistan has decided to open up new missions in different African countries while exploring opportunities for more in the future. On our part, the Center for Middle East and Africa at the Institute of Strategic Studies, Director General Ambassador Aizaz Ahmed Chaudhry, aims to fortify relations between Pakistan and Africa, as well as assist the government in chalking out a roadmap for future cooperation with the African continent. I believe that for Pakistan-Africa ties, a better tomorrow awaits. I would end my speech with the words of Mr. Nelson Mandela, who described Pakistan's relations with Africa in the following words, and I quote, "Our nations are joined not only by cultural and religious bonds, but also by common experiences and challenges. He hoped that Pakistan and Africa would work together to resolve the problems besetting our global family. This should be our hope, our vision, and our common goal. With these words, I would now like to invite Ambassador Aizaz Ahmed Chaudhry, Director General, who has also served as Pakistan's Foreign Secretary as well as Pakistan's Ambassador to the United States, for his welcome remarks. Ambassador Chaudhry.
Thank you, Amina. This was a day that I was really looking forward to. One, because Africa is special, and today we mark Africa Day. I know that Africa Day is still 5 days away. It is on 25th of May in the year 1963 that African Organization of African Unity was formed, and so they decided to celebrate this day as the Africa Day. Then I was sort of getting more information through my search engine. I found something very interesting. I did not know this thing, that Africa is also called, the original name of Africa is Alkibu Lan. Master Julius Kibitok would probably tell us that it means mother of mankind. And when I dug a little more into the history, I found that Africa is known as the ancient continent, a continent that has African ancestors going as back as 5 million years. I don't think anyone can really match that kind of record. So we want to congratulate all African ambassadors based in Pakistan who are being represented by their dean, Ambassador Bitok. We would request him to kindly convey our greetings, Institute of Strategic Studies wishes to your fellow compatriots in the African continent on this very auspicious day. The day is also special for us because the Center for Middle East and Africa that we had been really desiring to set up has been set up. And this was the wish and command of our Foreign Minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, when he launched a special initiative to promote deeper relations with Africa. He wanted ISSI to play a role. And if you all recall, the very first event that he organized was in the Institute, where all African ambassadors accredited to Pakistan were present. Again, Ambassador Bitok was there, of course, and Foreign Minister was there, Foreign Secretary was there. There are very few events in which both of them have joined us. And Ambassador Ali Javed's predecessor, of course, was instrumental in organizing that event. So we are very pleased that the Center for Middle East and Africa is starting with this as the first substantive event. Of course, a few days ago, on 30th of April, we had soft launched this center itself, and we could not have found a more capable person to head this than Ms. Amna Khan, and a more formidable team that she has of 3 officers, Arhama, Fatima, and Adiba. So we are very, very pleased that this center is now going to play its own role in this mission of ours. Now, why is Africa important? I think Amna has summed it up very well. Let me add a few. Africa is in fact a rich continent, and that's why people call it the continent of the future. It is rich in mineral resources like gold, diamond, platinum, etc. It is rich in crops like sugar, coffee, tea, ambassador of Kenya's homeland. And then it has a strategic location, a very strategic location. If you see west of Africa and east of Africa, it comes somewhere right in the middle. And therefore, it will always remain important. The strength of Africa is also in numbers. And that's why everybody, especially in multilateral organizations, is looking towards Africa. Why is Africa special for Pakistan, for my country? It is because, as Amna had explained, we participated zealously, eagerly, and with great sense of pride in the decolonization campaigns, in the liberation struggles, in the freedom struggles uh, mm, of African continent, of African nations. I know that even the Africa Day used to be called Africa Freedom Day once, Africa Liberation Day also. But it has now, of course, evolved after the formation of African Union. Other relevant factor that Amna rightly mentioned is Pakistan's connection with Africa through peacekeeping. We are one of the constant presence there. And we do hope that the latest passion of our government, which is to develop economic and commercial linkages with Africa, will come to fruition. That's very, very important. And I know that Ambassador Ali Javed is working especially hard on this. He is a man of ideas. I've always seen him very creative. He has been already giving ideas, and we are surely going to pick up some of those ideas with his permission to take up in the ISSI calendar of activities. The theme that I read, Ambassador Bitok, correct me if I am wrong, is a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. That's the theme for 2020 Africa Day. Now, when I delve further into what is inclusive growth, I discover that that it means equitable growth and equitable opportunities for economic growth with benefit going to every segment of society. Equitable opportunities and equitable benefits. That's inclusive growth. And I think that's exactly what Pakistan also wants to achieve itself. So here's another commonality between Pakistan and Africa, that we're all looking for equity of opportunities and of the benefits. We are also very happy that Imran Jaeger is with us. I don't think any foreign service diplomat of Pakistan can match the experience that Imran Jaeger has. He has served in 2 African countries as ambassador, and then also as a junior diplomat. So we are very pleased to have him, and I've heard him many times in the ambassador's lounge. He speaks very well, always makes catchy points. So we are very happy to have him. And of course, we have the blessings of Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, our chairman, Board of Governors, who's always there to help us, to guide us, to counsel us. So once again, a very warm welcome to the entire team of the Institute of Strategic Studies for celebrating Africa Day and in the presence of such honored guests. Back to you, Amna.
Thank you so much. I would like to invite Ms. Fatma Raza, who's our research associate at the Center for the Middle East and African Studies, for her presentation. Fatma.
Thank you, Amna. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. It is an honor to be presenting at this auspicious occasion today. As we're celebrating Africa Day today, I'll be starting my presentation with the history of the Pakistan-Africa relations. Pakistan and Africa enjoy a long-standing relationship that is deeply anchored in historical linkages. After gaining independence from colonial rule, Pakistan has been a staunch supporter of the liberation struggles in many African countries. Over the years, Pakistan has also greatly contributed to the UN peacekeeping missions in Africa, and Africa Day is celebrated annually in Pakistan with utmost zeal and enthusiasm. And our Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan in 2019 organized a two-day and voice conference titled Engage Africa to facilitate cooperation between both sides, while the Institute of Strategic Studies also held a roundtable dialogue to commemorate Africa Day last year. Teeming with opportunities and resources, Africa has rightly been called the continent of the future. And recognizing this, In 2019, the government of Pakistan announced its new Engage Africa policy for a robust engagement with the African continent. Taking a step towards implementation of this policy, Pakistan-Africa Trade Development Conference was also held earlier this year in Nairobi, Kenya, to enhance trade and to increase outreach to the African countries. Under the Engage Africa policy, economic diplomacy will be deployed to carve out further prospects and potentials for cooperation, such as diplomatic and economic outreach, exploring new markets, diversifying exports, strengthening institutional linkages with the African Union, and signing preferential trade agreements with regional trade groups, and also establishing linkages with the African Development Bank. A well-rounded policy of engagement will require all sectors to play their respective roles, such as the civil society, think tank cooperation, establishing Africa Study Centers in Pakistan, arranging scholarships and student exchange programs, and building on the existing defense cooperation through training programs and joint military exercises, thus tapping the untapped potential in all areas for a wholesome future partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatma. I would now like to call our first speaker, who is Ambassador Imran Yawar, who is no stranger to the region, and as the Director General pointed out, he has served extensively in the African continent. Ambassador Yawar was Pakistan's former ambassador to the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, as well as permanent representative to the African Union, as well as former ambassador to Algeria. He has also served in Morocco, Senegal, and Kenya. With these few words, I would now like to invite Ambassador Imran Yawar for his remarks. Ambassador Yawar.
Thank you very much, Amina. To start with, let me commend the efforts of the Institute of Strategic Studies, its management, for organizing this event to commemorate the Africa Day. I would also like to thank the Institute for this invitation to speak on the importance of this day. Let me begin by saying that I've had the opportunity to serve in a number of Pakistan missions across the African continent. And during this period, I traveled extensively within Africa, and in the process, developed first-hand understanding of the diversity of African cultures and traditions, the socio-ecological settings and rich archive of historical experiences, their multifaceted challenges, and the innumerable opportunities for development. Africa is a continent that is geographically spectacular and culturally rich. And in the words of Ernest Hemingway, if I have ever seen magic, it was in Africa. Now, May 25th is a momentous day for the people of Africa. On this day in 1963, the leaders of 32 African states came together to form the Organization of the African Union to stand against the political and economic exploitation of the continent, to eliminate the remaining vestiges of colonialism and apartheid, and of course, to move towards the objective of socio-economic integration. On the day of its inception, Emperor Haile Selassie blessed the event as he announced, "May the Union live for 1,000 years." But in 2002, the OAU was dissolved, and in its place was formed what we know as the African Union, which has adopted many of the same goals as its predecessor. Since then, AU has emerged as an important institution for socio-economic uplift in the continent through efforts which include, among others, the launch of the single African air transport market, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and most importantly, Africa's Visionary Continental Agenda 2063. These initiatives, supported by the African governments, mark a collective and strategic shift in the policy paradigm of Africa, which cannot be explained more beautifully than in the words of the Rwandan president, Mr. Paul Kagame, when he said, "Africa's story has been written by others. We need to own our problems and solutions and write our own story." And while Africa has succeeded in gaining its political freedom through a hard-won struggle for self-determination, the continent is still hostage to a number of challenges that require a concerted and sustainable effort to overcome. These include the elimination of poverty and hunger, terrorism, civil wars, forced migrations, ecological issues, and climate change. In addition, I believe there is a real and urgent need for an inclusive economic uplift in the region to create sustainable job opportunities for the people. The lack of these opportunities present a clear and present danger to peace and stability in the continent and requires bold steps by the governments to revitalize the economy. In the past decade alone, the continent has seen improvements in governance, public health provisions, conflict management, and in overcoming social challenges. And as Kenyan President Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta stated, Africa should no longer be seen as a playing ground for international games or an exporter of crisis, but as the world's biggest opportunity for economic growth and stability. And indeed, Africa's economic prospects are among the brightest in the world. 6 of the world's 12 fastest growing countries economies are in Africa, which include Ethiopia, Senegal, Angola, Cote d'Ivoire, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Rwanda. Furthermore, according to IMF's socio-economic forecast, between the period 2021 and 23, Africa's growth prospects will be among the highest in the world, as several sub-Saharan countries will experience robust economic growth at an average annual rate of 5% or more. The catalysts for driving this growth will be the sectors of banking, telecommunication, tourism, and infrastructure. Besides, as Ambassador Azaz Chaudhry also said, Africa's large deposits of natural resources and large uncultivated arable land, which promise a bright future for horticulture and agro-businesses. And of course, we should not forget Africa's youthful population, which constitutes a formidable market, particularly for regions' highest potentials for labor-intensive industrialization. Now, coming to Pakistan's relations with countries of Africa, there is no doubt, and it has been mentioned before also in this event, that we were at the forefront of support for liberation and independence movements for countries in Africa. We have also been very actively contributing to the Blue Berets in Africa. But while our contributions of the past have been plentiful, recent relations have been mired in apathy and scattered with lost opportunities. This is regretful. Nonetheless, it seems that there is a revival of interest in Pakistan. In January this year, as has been pointed out, the Pakistan Foreign Office organized the Pakistan-Africa Trade Development Conference in Nairobi, which was part of Pakistan's new Engage Africa policy. The policy is aimed at diversifying trade and economic relations and exploring avenues for mutual beneficial cooperation. Now, there's no doubt it's a good omen, but let me say that the success of this policy will depend upon adjusting our priorities with those of Africa. We need to see what Africa wants, not what we can give to Africa. To exhibit our seriousness and commitment to developing relations with Africa, I suggest first, Pakistan must boost its official presence in Africa. We need to be seen. Presently, we have only 15 missions looking after a total of 54 countries. This is far from adequate. However, it seems that the government has realized the issue and they have decided to open missions in Djibouti, Angola, Rwanda, Uganda, Ghana, and Ivory Coast. And mind it, these are among the fastest rapidly developing economies of Africa. The second, which for me is very important, is the need to invigorate high-level bilateral contacts or interaction with African leadership. We need to know Africans. Africans love personalized relations. Regrettably, from Pakistan, since 2014, there have been only 4 visits to Africa, of which 3 were to Maghreb countries and only 1 to Sub-Saharan Africa by the former President Mahmoud Hussein. We need to increase our interaction. We need to increase our visits, high-level visits by the President, the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, and senior officials. Let me share with you that since 2014, there were 28 high-level visits from India to various African capitals. And correspondingly, there were, I think, 22 visits from Africa to India. So we need to work on this thing. If we are serious, if we are committed, we need to establish a regular mechanism for bilateral interaction. I would like to conclude by saying that there's a significant need to educate more people in Pakistan about Africa and the opportunities it presents for trade, development, and growth. I wish I had more time to outline the vast landscape of these opportunities, but in light of the discussions of today, I hope that this will be a subject for another day. Thank you very much, Amna.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Yawar. You've made some very pertinent points. I would now like to invite our next speaker, who is Dr. Roxana Siddiqui, who's the former head of department of the International Relations Department, Quaid-e-Azam University, and more importantly, a reputable academic with in-depth knowledge and expertise on the African continent. She has authored 3 books on the sub-Saharan African political economy and has written several dozen research articles on the region, rightfully giving her the title of Pakistan's genuine expert on Africa. I would now like to invite Dr. Roxana Siddiqui for her comments.
Assalamu alaikum and habare gani karibuni to Excellency, the High Commissioner from Kenya. I'm not an expert on Africa because the word Africa is used as a monolith. I work on East and Southern Africa, and I did my doctorate on Tanzania and have the privilege of having taught in 2 topmost universities in Sub-Sahara. One was the University of Dar es Salaam, and the other was the Witwatersrand University in South Africa. And I continue to work on the region, and I'm very excited by this great effort by the Institute of Strategic Studies. It has to be congratulated. I will take the thread of the last sentence of His Excellency, Mr. Yawar Sahib, who said that people need to be educated on Africa. And since I myself an academic, my work, this thing that I will speak on is basically on that premise, how to get involved in Africa on an academic and scholastic level. So to an average Pakistani, Africa means a faraway continent, a land of spectacular beauty, game parks, safaris, and forests. Pakistani media in general gives little coverage to Africa, which is an impediment in the true appreciation of the continent. Pakistani scholars on African studies, who are few and far between, complain frequently about a lack of international awareness about the continent in general. However, as my predecessor who said that magic happens in Africa, I've lived there. It's the most beautiful continent I've ever lived in. Needless to mention that Pakistan shares with Africa many cultural, political, and religious leaders. Africa has produced countless figures who are shared heroes of many developing countries. To name a few would be Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, Julius Nyerere, Joe Slovo, Ruth First, Chris Hani, Desmond Tutu, Walter Sisulu, Amilcar Cabral, Patrice Lumumba, Samora Machel, Umar Mukhtar, and Gamal Abdel Nasser. South Africa alone, the beautiful rainbow country, has produced 9 Nobel laureates. Who can forget the Green Belt movement led by late Dr. Wangari Maathai of Kenya, who received the Nobel Prize for the Environment. So any talk of third world solidarity without Africa is absurd, because Africa's contribution to liberation struggles, truth and reconciliation, non-aligned movement, third world literature, art, poetry, and music is truly staggering. Pakistan must continue its efforts in engaging Africa on several dimensions, as mentioned by the other speakers. But for me, it's very, very important that if you wish to engage on Africa, then on the scholastic level also you have to engage. And the primary obligation of scholars who are working on this region in Pakistan are, for instance, to assess, evaluate, and maybe define their respective governments' foreign policy interests in Africa, gauge research priorities and scholarly work that promotes understanding between Pakistan and Africa, to enhance African studies in order to increase our country's understanding, to contribute to the conceptual sophistication of the discipline of Afro-Asia, and to assist in the formulation and implementation of policies concerned with increasing standards of living and expanded opportunities in Pakistan and in Africa. Pakistani scholars of Africa should articulate, defend, and promote groups suffering oppression, injustice, and deprivation in all continents, especially in ours and in Afro-Asia. Research in Africa provides us the opportunity to test different theories, academic theories in both regions. And I would finally like to make some suggestions. That one is that courses on Africa should be offered in all Pakistani universities and training institutes. Afro-Asian studies should replace the Euro-American centered approach. The Institute of Modern Languages could initiate instruction in African languages, and funds should be enhanced for Africa-specific research. Linkage programs with universities could promote faculty-student exchange, and Higher Education Commission could encourage grants and fundings. Pakistani libraries should be encouraged to subscribe to African studies journals published not only in Africa and Pakistan, but all over the world, and enhanced collaboration in the field of environmental sciences, epidemiology, alternative medicine, journalism, cinema, music, and countries, and countless other disciplines in natural and social sciences. These are basically my suggestions, and I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Siddiqui. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, His Excellency Professor Julius Kibet Bitok, High Commissioner of the Republic of Kenya and Dean of African Countries Ambassadors in Pakistan. Ambassador Professor Julius Bitok has had a distinguished career in public service spanning over 18 years, covering a broad spectrum of assignments. Ambassador Bitok holds a PhD in business management, finance from Oklahoma State University. He combines his in-depth experience and expertise drawn from a cross-section of engagements in public service, diplomatic service, research, and academia in Kenya and abroad. Following his appointment as Kenya's High Commissioner, Ambassador Bitok has demonstrated sound leadership, which has seen Kenya consolidate its bilateral ties with Pakistan. He has been instrumental in promoting bilateral relations between Kenya and Pakistan through joint ministerial commission, exhibitions, trade fairs, networkings, and other consultative forums. With these words, again, it gives me immense pleasure to invite Ambassador Bitok.
Thank you. The Chief Guest, Additional Secretary, Africa, Mr. Ali Javed, the Director General for Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, Mr. Assis Chandri, former ambassadors, high commissioners of Pakistan to Africa, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and assalamu alaikum. It gives me great pleasure and honor to speak today as we celebrate the 57th anniversary of African Union, popularly known as African Day. On my own behalf and that of African Group of Ambassadors, High Commissioners, Head of Missions, I wish to convey our most sincere gratitude to the Center for Middle East and Africa at the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, for inviting me to celebrate African Day in a very special way through webinar. I want to say, shukriya. African Group of Ambassadors and High Commissioners are happy with the steps the government and the people of Pakistan have taken to engage Africa. Notably, there have been efforts by the government of Pakistan to boost engagements with Africa. A classic example is the just concluded Pakistan-Africa Trade and Development Conference that was held in Nairobi in January 2020. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Nairobi Conference, in my view, was a landmark development in Engage Africa policy of Pakistan. As you may be aware, it was officially opened by the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, and attended by a high-level delegation from Pakistan, led by Pakistan Foreign Minister, Honorable Mahmood Qureshi, and Trade Minister, Honorable Dawood, and over 100 business men and women from Pakistan attended. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the conference was indeed the beginning of a new chapter in Pakistan-Africa engagements. We look forward to more such interactions and visits at the highest level of government between Africa and Pakistan. As you know, high-level visits is the engine of effective diplomatic engagements. I wish to confirm that plans are underway for high-level visits between Kenya and Pakistan. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa and Pakistan are good friends and have for a long time been collaborating in different fields of development. There is no better time to forge better and deeper partnership than now, especially at the backdrop of the Engage Africa policy of Pakistan, coupled together with the new African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. We do expect Pakistan to take advantage of the current momentum of African integration. The African Continental Free Trade Area seeks to ease the free movement of people, goods, and services across the continent, transforming the 1.2 billion African population into a seamless investment and growth platform to promote shared prosperity. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Africa Group recognizes the significant contribution of trade and investment as vehicles of accelerated economic development. The fusion of African enormous natural resources and Pakistan's technology can bring enormous benefits to both Africa and Pakistan. There is need, therefore, to develop a common agenda of action with institutional support in order to promote enhanced trade and investment between Africa and Pakistan for the mutual benefit of our people. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the multilateral level, African Union has endorsed Kenya as its candidate for the non-permanent seat of the United Nations Security Council for 2021 to 2022. We look forward to Pakistani support on this important election scheduled for 17th of June 2020. Finally, I wish to once again thank the Additional Secretary Africa, Mr. Javed Khan, former High Commissioners, ambassadors, distinguished speakers for today, for taking time out of your busy schedules to grace this important occasion. Special thanks also to the Director General of Institute of Strategic Studies and the entire fraternity, and more specifically to Amina Khan for making this event a success. I want to take this early opportunity to wish you all a joyful Eid Mubarak. And while you are enjoying your Eid, enjoy Kenyan tea. Africa, Pakistan, Zindabad. Thank you very much. Back to you, Amina.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Breton. Thank you. Our guest speaker for today's event is Mr. Ali Javed, who is Additional Foreign Secretary, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where he is also currently serving as the Chief of Africa Division with special focus on Engage Africa initiative that we've been talking about so far. Mr. Javed has had a diverse diplomatic career. He has served in over 5 continents, and some of the countries that he has served in that stand out are Libya, Japan, the United States, and Oman. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I will try to be as brief as possible, but I think I would be doing injustice if I did not thank your Director General for the vision that he has brought to this institution under the patronage of the worthy Honorable Chairman, and a very vibrant team that I was personally privileged to meet on the soft opening when I was visiting the premises of the ISSI, and I was also very happy to see that certain renovations were taking place to make the institute even more welcoming and more open to more and more events and guests. I have taken over this responsibility only 2.5, 3 months ago. And as soon as I came to this office, I met my predecessor, Dr. Arai, who is now Pakistan's ambassador to Dakar. I had very long discussions with him on how this idea has progressed. And of course, as already highlighted by a very worthy ambassador, Imran Yavar, I am not going to dwell much into the bilateral or specifically the aspects of African continent that are very, very important. Ambassador Azaz Chaudhry has also shed light on why Africa is important and why Africa is very, very unique. My very dear friend and brother, the Dean of the African group in Pakistan, has also highlighted many events that have taken place, including the hosting of the first Africa-Pakistan, or shall I say Pakistan-Africa Trade Conference. Nonetheless, I would like to share with you a small story that when I was invited to write an article in the newspaper on the National Day of Oman, because India, Pakistan and Bangladesh are constituting 90% of the total amount of people that are living in Oman, the three ambassadors are very, very important in that very context. So I was approached to write a cover story on Oman National Day. And when I sent my draft, I was called by my friend who was the chief editor, and he said that, Excellency, you have missed a lot of things in your article. And I said that what those might be. He said, you have not talked about the bilateral trade figures, you have not talked about what we are importing, what we are exporting. I said, yes, this is the message that I personally would like to put out there, because I am reaching out to the people on both sides. I am not writing this message for the economists or for the business community alone. In Africa, Pakistan's relationship should not be measured, as I told my friend in Oman, through economic or statistical data. Although business is very important and it is how this planet is going by, yet as it was first highlighted by Ambassador Yavar, it is the personalized relations that are valued on both sides. Pakistan and Africa have a lot of gap to cover bilaterally. I think I would be doing the right thing to highlight that over 25 years, Pakistan and Zimbabwe have not convened the Joint Commission. And similarly with Sudan, the gap is 24 years. It surprises me because our relations with Zimbabwe and Sudan otherwise are phenomenal. But Kenya, my dear brother, the gap is 16 years. Again, unbelievable. With Morocco, the gap is 12 years. In a country like Morocco, there has been one visit by the foreign minister, which was bilateral, in 50 years. With South Africa, with Tanzania and Nigeria, the gap is 6 years. It disturbs me in more than one way, and I fail to understand why this gap was allowed to be created. Now, if we were to initiate visits at the highest level, as the worthy speakers have spoken earlier, again, this alone is going to be one huge task, because given the size of the continent, the number of the countries, the limited presence of Pakistan diplomatically across the continent will present a whole new challenge. Nonetheless, if these are our challenges, these are also our opportunities. And I think as strategists, as leaders in our own right, we should draw strength from our core convergences. And the core convergence between Pakistan and Africa is our history. Pakistan has a similar history of struggle and suffering as the African continent. And therefore, from the day Pakistan achieved its own independence, it has always raised the voice for the oppressed and the suppressed populations on this planet. I think this is the strongest point that binds Pakistani nation with Africa, and there is no other requirement for statistical data to convince the people on both sides. Yes, as government, we may be failing, if I may say so, and we may be lacking. And our institutions, the television itself, and other social media platforms must be utilized to bring about a greater awareness. I had therefore suggested, and I am still preparing my presentation that I would like to share at a later stage, with the help of I think 7, 8, or 9 think tanks in Pakistan, including the Institute of Strategic Studies, what should be the way forward. It should not be a kind of a report that a bureaucrat writes, which has very little ownership in the civil society or very little ownership in the general masses. It should be one way forward that is actually owned by the academia, the civil society, and to be very accurate, by the two populations in Pakistan and in Africa. I cannot point out any area of contention, any contentious issue between the two continents, the two entities, Pakistan and Africa. I can only list a very long list of points that are there for our convergence. Pakistan itself has been having a difficult time for the past 41 years. First, we were faced with the aggression in Afghanistan by former USSR, which lasted 10 years. And when the aggression ended, the whole world, especially the West, came out as winners. They became, many of them, the countries became democratic, and Europe progressed. Germany itself was unified. But then again, the new war was started in 2001, which is ongoing. And it is very sad to see that 20 years, we are now faced with another very hostile war on our borders. All along, the world's largest and longest serving population of refugees has been hosted as our guests and brothers in Pakistan. This needs to be understood. Now, why I have cited this is because I would like you to also take into consideration that while for 40 years Pakistan was faced with such humongous challenge, its commitment to peacekeeping never came down. Pakistan has always maintained its commitment to the UN Charter and to establishing and promoting and building peace across the entire African continent. Our contribution until the 70s was #1, and thereon Pakistan is and remains the second highest contributor to United Nations peacekeeping operations. We are not there to dig gold or to search for diamonds, sir. We are there to promote peace and to bring about that change, one that the Africans actually aspire for, and one that we have benefited for ourselves, which is freedom. I think that sets Pakistan apart from all other interest groups, because relationships, to be very fair, are driven by interest. Nonetheless, relationship in Pakistan, and as far as Pakistan is concerned, is not driven by interest. It is indeed driven by our human values, our core human values that we both share. I think this makes our task very easy. Nonetheless, we are going to expand our diplomatic footprint. We are going to add 5 new missions. And I think that the way forward would be to add another 5 and then add to yet another 5, on which we are working with our think tanks on what should be the next 5, and then what should be the next 5 after those 5. So I am trying to look at doubling the size of Pakistan's diplomatic presence in Africa. Nonetheless, would doubling the size make a real difference? Once again, it is a question that is to be asked, that if our size was doubled, what impact would it bring? Yes, it would enhance our outreach and diplomatic footprint, but would it enhance the relationship? Would it then address other issues? That is another separate question that I would leave all of you to think about. I think with whatever limited size Pakistan has been present in Africa, even if it were 14 or 15 missions, we have still done very well. Nonetheless, our ownership, the greater ownership, with time it has eroded, and that concerns me the most. The ownership from the two people in Africa and in Pakistan of this very, very great human relationship. I would also like to suggest that Pakistan should establish forums, friendship forums at the levels of head of state at the level of the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, and the Speaker of the Parliament. For instance, the speakers of all parliaments of the world meet at the IPU. They are already there. So why not convene a Pakistan-Africa Speakers Forum where they will have informal meeting, just host a friendly tea, so get to know each other. This is what is being stressed. We need to get to know each other names, where we come from, what we look like. And then this relationship can then transcend from the highest level of the parliament down to the grassroots level of our people. I would also like to request the Pakistan television to respond very positively and very generously through the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting to partner with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and African missions in Pakistan. And we are concurrently working with media and the corporate sector so that a larger partnership and a larger ownership is created where we, not just the African missions in Pakistan, but the entire Pakistani country as a whole, the nation, the people, the TV, the civil society, the academia, the think tanks, the businessmen, the media, the social media can all come together every year to celebrate what I would like to call Pakistan Africa Day, because Africa is already celebrating Africa Day, but why not celebrate it in a larger scale and with a greater ownership of the people in Pakistan that will then be able to understand the depth as well as the diversity of Pakistan-Africa relationships. So high on my agenda shall be the introduction of a national event. And I do not want this event to be just celebrated here in Pakistan. I would like this event to be celebrated by all Pakistan missions abroad. Now that is the kind of energy that I would like to bring about. However, this is only a proposal. There is a long list of people that need to look into it. We are also proposing a Pakistan-Africa military and defense cooperation platform. We are also proposing Pakistan-Africa human rights cooperation platform, because Pakistani government, their policies and the priorities are identical to those that are being practiced and being followed by the governments in Africa with regards to human rights. So it is again a great convergence, and we always meet in Geneva, where the Human Rights Commission is, but we would like to establish a platform just like the speakers platform, where the ministers for human rights can actually get to meet with each other and get to know each other better. So if we are able to raise these informal, friendly platforms, although we may not be meeting bilaterally, we could still meet at a very different and a diverse range of areas and places where Pakistani leadership can meet with their counterparts. For instance, we all know that the United Nations General Assembly sessions take place on the 3rd week of September every year in New York. The entire world leadership is there. So why not create another platform which is in New York, where you and we are already present, and then without incurring, avoidable expenditures, because yes, governments want to save money to spend it on development of their populations. So these are certain ideas that I would be getting the input from our think tanks, especially after the Africa Continent Free Trade Agreement is established and it is put into motion. I would like, through this forum, to convey Pakistan's best wishes for the African continent to come at par with the intra-trade that is being conducted by other regions. It is 1/3 today of what is being traded among the European countries. We wish all the success to the Africa Free Trade Agreement. We wish all the success individually and collectively to each and every African citizen, each and every African state, and we wish to renew our commitment and reaffirm our very, very strong and firm belief that Pakistan and Africa had a common history, and therefore it is our future, which is also very common. I thank the Institute and I thank everyone else for hearing me very patiently and giving me so much time. Thank you very much, and Assalamu Alaikum, and Pakistan, Africa, Zindabad. Over to you, Amna.
Thank you so much, Mr. Javed. I believe Ambassador Chaudhry, you wanted to make a point?
Yeah, first of all, I must say that it's a very interesting discussion. I wanted to also recognize Dr. Rukhsana Siddiqui, whom I missed in my initial welcome remarks. She spoke with passion. She has worked and lived in Africa, and I think she brings a very unique perspective. So thank you very much for being with us, Dr. Siddiqui. Now, I just want to make 1 or 2 points in response to Mr. Ali Javed's comments, the chief guest today. One is that the way forward that he wants to work out with 8 or 9 think tanks, including ISSI, I want to assure him that we will be a very keen partner in that, in drafting that way forward with him under his guidance. The second is that for our next 2 events of the center with respect to Africa, I'm already thinking of doing one program specific program on economy and trade, the economic and trade linkages with the participation of chambers of commerce and the businessmen, and build on the ideas that were generated in the Nairobi conference, and before that in the ISSI conference on Engage Africa, both of them. So that's one idea. The other program that we could think of, and I'll request Amina and her team to do that, is to dedicate a program on defense cooperation between the two. Theoretical framework is provided by the peacekeeping and the decolonization linkages. But practically, Pakistan has a very, or this would be a great idea also to hold an event on that also. So once again, I would assure everyone that the Institute is very keen to work with all partners, whoever wish to work on these areas, including, of course, the Pakistan Africa Day. Should a national event be ever celebrated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of course, will be a very keen partner in that also. Thank you. Amna, back to you.
Thank you. So for our final speaker, I would now like to invite Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Chairman, Board of Governors, Institute of Strategic Studies, as well as a former ambassador of Pakistan to Iran, Iraq, China, Saudi Arabia, and Mongolia, for his closing remarks. Ambassador Khalid Mahmood.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Ambassador Azaz Chaudhry, and Director, Center for Middle East and Africa, Imran Khan, His Excellency the High Commissioner for Kenya, the Dean of the African Ambassadors in Islamabad, Ambassador Imran Jaeger, and Ambassador Ali Javed, and Dr. Rukhsana Siddiqui. It gives me really great pleasure to participate in this event organized by the Africa Center, Middle East and Africa Center of the Institute of Strategic Studies. Its first event to mark the Africa Day. And I want to extend my felicitations to all our African brothers and sisters on this occasion. See, the speakers before me have very ably highlighted the importance of the African continent, the second largest continent in the world, comprising more than 50 states, I think about 54 states, its strategic location, and also that It is the hub of, strategic reserves, minerals in the world. You see, while talking of Africa Day, one cannot but recall Pakistan's very deep engagement with this continent, particularly since the days of decolonization. See, Pakistan, after becoming member of the UN, spearheaded the fight against colonialism and apartheid. There are so many incidents, they are very touching. For example, perhaps few people now know that the leadership of Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, while they were struggling, they didn't have any locus standi at the UN, and it was Pakistan's mission to the UN from where they operated, and it was on the passports of Pakistan that the leadership like Bourguiba, Farhat Abbas, Ben Bella, they traveled on Pakistani passports to the UN. So this was the commitment Pakistan, showed towards the people of Africa struggling to realize their right to self-determination. So much so that in Tunisia, there is a road named after Professor Ahmad Shah Bukhari, the permanent representative of Pakistan, who in the Security Council in those days espoused the cause of African decolonization. The second field in which Pakistan has been deeply involved in Africa is, of course, the peacekeeping. Now, the peacekeeping, even starting from 1960 in Congo, Pakistan sent its peacekeepers, and ever since it has been participating in various peacekeeping operations in Africa, in Sierra Leone, in Somalia, and Eritrea, and so many other, even now they are engaged in many UN peacekeeping operations, current peacekeeping operations in Africa. And there are many Pakistanis who have had the honor of serving African governments after they became independent. On some other occasion, I recall their names, that Mr. M.B. Ahmed served as Chief Justice of Nigeria. Air Marshal Daud Pota was head of the Zimbabwean Air Force. Sabzada Yaqub Khan, Special Envoy of the UN on Western Sahara. Sharyar Khan, Special Envoy of UN for Rwanda. Agha Abdul Hamid, UN Commissioner for Namibia. And also one cannot but recall the historic advisory opinion given by the International Court of Justice on Namibia. At that time, the court was headed by President of the ICJ, Sir Zafrullah Khan. So Pakistan has been engaged with Africa in so many ways that it is a pity that we have not built upon all these linkages which were established in the past. You see, I have my own love affair also with Africa, story of love affair. It was in 1967 that was to Algiers. And from there, I was moved to Sudan. And from Sudan, I went to New York to our permanent mission to the UN. And there I was given the fourth committee, which dealt with decolonization. I was also part of the peacekeeping committee, again, which dealt with peacekeeping operations in Africa also. And what's more, that in more recent times, I have been a member of the UN Peacebuilding Fund. And in that capacity, I visited Liberia to inspect, how the peacekeeping operations were going on there. So this is, and so we have, and even in the foreign ministry, I was in charge, additional secretary, Africa at one time. So I have been personally also very much committed to all the African causes, and I have built up many personal relationships with African diplomats. So for the future, many good suggestions have been made. Increase in high-level visits and role of private sector, and but I think we should particularly also try to gain from the experience of Africa in the field of tourism, because this government is attaching a lot of importance to tourism, and Africa has a rich experience in this field. And also, of course, trade and commerce is there, and the role of private sector is there. So I feel heartened that the government of Pakistan now has a new Africa engagement policy, and in that, and many proposals have been made, are being considered to how to strengthen ties between Pakistan and African countries. So the role of Center for Middle East and Africa, I think will also be very helpful. And as the Director General said, that institute will be ready to cooperate in evolving new ideas and also trying to help implement those new ideas. So with these words, I again congratulate our African brothers and sisters, as well as the Pakistanis, in celebrating this Africa Day, and the credit goes to the Center for Middle East and Africa under Amna Khan to have organized this occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood. Well, this brings us to the end of today's webinar. I would just like to once again express my deep gratitude to Ambassador Bitok, to Dr. Rukhsana Siddiqui, Ambassador Javed, and Ambassador Imran Yawar, as well as the Director General and Ambassador Khalid Mahmood for this event and helping us celebrate Africa Day in our own little way. Thank you very much.